1942 dispatch log, 1 intercepted consignment recorded. 1 rat package was opened under inspection clearance. 1 seam line was spotted in the coal dust. The report was sealed that night. Early 1942 placed Britain under accounting pressure. The European theatre demanded disruptive industrial effects. German factories depended on coal and steam systems. Boiler houses were routine industrial choke points. Sabotage planners sought low-access solutions. Conventional raids consumed aircraft and trained crews. Internal budgets favoured small tools over sorties. SOE received directives for persistent economic interference. Targets were dispersed across occupied and German territory. Physical entry into plants remained uncommon. Railway cuts produced predictable repair patterns. Power stations gained heavier guard routines. But boiler rooms still relied on habit and speed. Coal handling remained a repetitive manual process. That habit created an opportunity for concealment. The requirement concerned concealment within ordinary waste. The requirement also demanded minimal specialist instruction. An agent needed a device without machining shops. The device needed easy transport in small packages. It also needed plausible disposal by enemy staff. SOE assessed animals as common boiler house debris. Rats were already present near coal storage. Dead rats were routinely removed without attention. A dead rat could be thrown into coal. Coal shoveling would move it into furnaces. A concealed charge could detonate in heat. The concept aimed at boiler shell failure. Boiler shell failure could disable a plant. Secondary damage could follow from steam release. So scalding injuries were a foreseeable consequence. The effect relied on enemy handling decisions. No agent needed access to combustion chambers. The agent needed only placement near coal piles. SOE technical officers summarized the mechanism as behavioral. The engineering lay in mimicry of filth. The design accepted interception as a risk. The design sought confusion through implausible appearance. British planners recorded a need for deniable sabotage. They also required limited signature materials. Explosives were already handled by clandestine networks. Standard plastic explosive offered manageable packing. Detonators could be matched to thermal triggers. The rat served as a container and decoy. The device became known as the exploding rat. Within files it carried a dry descriptive label. Its paperwork emphasized boiler damage, while not spectacle. The intended front was occupied Western Europe. Coal distribution for industry was a constant stream. German security focused on weapons, not carcasses. SOE assumed boiler workers would discard rats quickly. Discarding would place the object into coal. SOE also assumed the object would be unseen. That assumption drove attention to exterior preparation. The rat had to appear already dead. The rat had to appear naturally handled. Artificial stitching would invite closer inspection. Odour and decay created practical limitations. A preserved carcass reduced handling reluctance. A carcass that looked fresh raised questions. SOE therefore considered drying and treatment methods. The device required a stable internal cavity. Small rodents provided very limited internal volume. Rats offered a larger consistent body. Rats were also widely available in Britain. Procurement notes described collection from pest control sources. Collected carcasses required cleaning and draining. The skin had to remain unbroken externally. A controlled incision allowed cavity access. The incision line needed concealment under fur. Technicians selected seams along the belly. The belly seam aligned with natural handling points. Internal organs were removed to create volume. The cavity was wiped to reduce fluids. A charge was shaped to fit the cavity. Weight balance mattered for convincing appearance. A heavy abdomen could look abnormal. Explosive mass therefore stayed within realistic limits. The chosen explosive was malleable and compact. A detonator was embedded within the charge. Trigger choice prioritized temperature-induced initiation. A direct flame contact was unreliable in boilers. Heat transfer through ash could still be sufficient. A chemical delay could also be considered. SOE already used time pencils elsewhere. Time pencils were less suitable for coal handling. Boiler insertion timing was unknown and variable. Thermal initiation partly addressed that timing uncertainty. Thermal initiation required insulation during transport. Premature heating during transit had to be prevented. Technicians wrapped the detonator against friction. A safety arrangement prevented casual impact initiation. Even so, transport risk remained present. Packaging needed to avoid compression on the rat. A rigid container reduced crushing forces. Containers also had to look mundane. Some labels used animal terminology only. Training instructions were short and procedural. And agents were told to avoid direct hand carrying. Agents were told to avoid warm pockets. Storage required cool-dry conditions. A controlled incision was closed after packing. The incision was closed with tight stitches. Stitches were brushed to raise fur coverage. External blood traces were avoided deliberately. A cleaned rat could appear suspiciously clean. Technicians rubbed coal dust onto the fur. Coal dust restored plausible grime patterns. Coal dust also concealed minor stitching lines. The rat then looked like boiler room refuse. Finished devices were left to dry further. Drying reduced smell and moisture. Drying also stiffened the body posture. A stiff carcass could look unnatural. Technicians adjusted limb positions during drying. They aimed for common dead rat postures. The tail position had to look incidental. Artificially arranged tails looked posed. The team experimented with loose packing of limbs. Each prepared rat was inspected by a second officer. Inspection focused on seam visibility under coal dust. Inspection also checked detonator seating within the cavity. A single failure could expose the whole method. A single accident could implicate the network. Therefore, the technical branch kept strict numbers. They limited distribution to vetted channels. They also limited written descriptions of function. Most instructions were passed verbally when possible. Where writing existed, it used coded language. Field handlers were told the rat was dangerous. They were instructed to avoid squeezing. They were instructed to avoid open flames. This caution reduced accidental initiation risk. However, it also increased handling awkwardness. And awkward handling could look suspicious at checkpoints. SOE considered the device as tradecraft intensive, yet it required no complex machining. That met the minimal workshop criterion. The rat used familiar explosive components. The novelty lay in external disguise. The disguise exploited German boiler room routines. Boiler rooms had constant coal movement. Coal movement involved shovels and carts. Rats in coal were not surprising. The plan assumed workers would toss it quickly. Tossing would mix it into coal pile. Later shoveling would feed it into furnaces. In a stoker-fired boiler, coal fed steadily. In a hand-fired boiler, coal was batch-fed. Both methods could introduce the rat. Heat would rise rapidly after insertion. The rat's position would be uncontrolled. Thermal initiation had to tolerate variation. A detonator placement near the surface aided heating. Too shallow placement risked external discovery. Too deep placement delayed heating beyond usefulness. Engineers assessed a practical compromise depth for heating. They aimed for delayed detonation inside the boiler. Rupture of tubes was a plausible outcome. Rupture could release steam into the boiler house. A pressure vessel breach could split seams. Breach could also damage brickwork and fittings. Even without rupture, a blast could warp grates. Warped grates required shutdown and repair. Plant downtime would reduce output indirectly. Downtime also forced investigations and security measures. SOE valued disruption beyond physical damage. A strange method could shift enemy attention. Enemy attention could increase inspection delays. Inspection delays could slow coal loading. When coal loading slowdowns could ripple across production, SOE notes treated this as cumulative effect. The design accepted counterintelligence exposure as probable. If exposed, the method could be broadcast. Broadcast could reduce fear by familiarity. Broadcast could also create persistent suspicion. SOE accepted this as a trade-off. The device was small enough for training. Training could be given to agents quickly. However, the device demanded delicate placement. An agent needed access to coal storage. Coal storage often sat near guarded perimeters. Some sites used enclosed coal bunkers under lock. Others used open piles near sidings. The open piles were the primary target. Open piles allowed a quick toss. Tossing could be done during night movement. Night movement required knowledge of guard schedules. At SOE's country sections evaluated candidate sites. They selected sites tied to armaments plants. They also selected power plants for rail yards. The rat was not intended for homes. The rat was reserved for industrial targets. This limitation reduced uncontrolled civilian exposure. Even so, collateral risk remained acknowledged. The technical branch recorded that risk as acceptable. They framed it within total war sabotage doctrine. They also noted the device was not recoverable. Once placed, it could not be retrieved safely. That increased operational commitment demands for each agent. Agents had to be confident in target selection. Mistakes could endanger friendly networks and local contacts. Mistakes could also harm local civilians. Those concerns entered internal risk assessments. Risk assessments also addressed transport routes. Where devices had to leave Britain covertly, they would be moved to staging depots. From depots, they would move by courier. Couriers faced inspection at borders and checkpoints. Therefore, packaging avoided obvious animal outlines in transit. The rat was placed within a box. The box contained other plausible items. Sometimes boxes carried medical supplies cover. Sometimes they carried mechanical parts cover. Cover stories varied by route and handler. Handlers were instructed not to open boxes. Field movement delays would compromise the device. Delays could also lead to spoilage. Spoilage could reveal internal packing and unusual weight. The device required controlled inventory rotation. Bureaucratic tracking was minimal but present. Each device had a serial reference number. The serial number was kept within SOE files. Then agents never saw the full number system. This compartmentation reduced compromise consequences after arrest. Procurement documents described the item as rat package. Engineering notes avoided vivid descriptive language. Such dryness aligned with official tone. At higher levels, the device was a minor line item. It competed for attention with explosive supply. Explosive supply was under pressure from other demands. Sabotage tools drew from the same stock. Procurement disputes emerged over detonator allocation. Detonators were prioritized for larger missions. Smaller devices risked cancellation on that basis. SOE technical staff argued for psychological value. They cited potential factory shutdown fear. They also cited minimal insertion requirements. A committee meeting recorded conditional approval. Approval required limited production quantities and tight control. The initial batch was prepared as a trial run. Trial runs were evaluated by handling tests. Handling tests focused on package durability. Handling tests also examined accidental drop scenarios. SOE accepted that risk within planning. They treated the device as experimental. A further test involved controlled heating. Reports noted variability across preparations. The team adjusted detonator placement accordingly. They also standardized rat size selection. Size selection reduced internal volume variability across batches. Standardization required rejecting smaller carcasses during preparation. Rejected carcasses were disposed under security procedures. Disposal prevented scavenging and rumor among staff. Rumor could compromise internal secrecy and operational security. SOE maintained strict waste handling rules. They burned waste under controlled conditions. They recorded destruction in workshop logs. Such logs were kept minimal and coded. The device required a careful placement method. Primary method remained direct coal pile toss. Direct toss required site infiltration skills. Those skills were already scarce within occupied networks. That scarcity influenced allocation debates inside planning offices. Some officers preferred simpler explosive charges. Simple charges could be placed on machinery directly. However, direct placement required plant access. Plant access was the limiting factor. The rat offered a compromise entry method. Compromise methods were valued in 1942. It did not require heavy metal casing. Metal casing increased checkpoint detection by simple searches. These rat used mostly organic exterior. Organic exterior could be mistaken for refuse. The charge itself still needed protection. Moisture ingress could degrade explosive performance. Therefore, coal-fired sites were prioritized. Coal-fired sites were common in heavy industry. They were also common in rail maintenance depots. Depots had access points with lower security. SOE lists included depots near occupied rail hubs. The device could be placed during depot shifts. Shift timing required local intelligence from agents. Local intelligence channels were fragile under police pressure. Fragility increased risk of compromise during courier turnover. Compromise was a constant issue in sabotage work. SOE therefore limited distribution to trusted lines. They also kept the device's concept compartmentalized. Few agents were told the full rationale. Most were told only placement instructions. This reduced the chance of casual discussion. The device still carried distinctive physical identity. If found, it could be traced to Britain. The British origin would be assumed regardless. SOE accepted that as unavoidable for sabotage work. By mid-1942, prepared devices entered dispatch pipelines. Dispatch pipelines used clandestine packing and labeling. Boxes were transferred to shipping points. Shipping points were guarded against theft. Internal security monitored staff access lists. Access lists were kept short for internal security. Each box required multiple signatures for release. Such signatures created paper trails inside supply offices. Paper trails were minimized but not eliminated. A single shipment was routed toward continental networks. That shipment did not reach intended agents. German authorities intercepted a consignment before field delivery. The interception likely occurred along a courier chain. Exact interception circumstances remain unclear in many accounts. What mattered was the enemy obtained intact examples. Enemy technicians examined the device construction. They recognized explosive components within carcasses. They also recognized the intended boiler mechanism. German security services treated it as evidence. They displayed it to demonstrate British methods. They used it for training and warnings. Warnings were circulated to boiler staff. Staff were told to check coal for foreign objects. This instruction altered routine behavior in boiler houses. Routine alteration reduced the device's feasibility. SOE learned of the interception through reports. While reports described German display of the rats, the display included the preserved carcass form. The display aimed at ridicule and vigilance. Ridicule did not reduce the practical warning effect. Vigilance increased handling of dead animals. Workers became more likely to inspect before discarding. Inspection would reveal sewing seams despite coal dust. Inspection would also reveal weight irregularities. Therefore, the method lost its advantage. SOE evaluated whether to continue production. Continuing would require new concealment strategies. New strategies would increase complexity and cost. Procurement committees favoured other sabotage lines. They redirected detonators to more reliable devices. They also redirected plastic explosive stock. The RAT project was effectively discontinued. Some prepared units may have remained in storage. So storage would further degrade carcasses and increase odour. Degraded carcasses were unsafe and unsuitable. Safe disposal became a final administrative task. Workshop logs recorded destruction of remaining units. Destruction likely used controlled burning or burial. SOE avoided external disposal due to discovery risk. Even after cancellation, the concept influenced thinking. It showed value in exploiting routine labour habits. It also showed limits of novelty weapons. Enemy intelligence could neutralise a method quickly. The interception itself created strategic effects. German counterintelligence gained a propaganda exhibit. German staff gained a cautionary training example. British planners gained a lesson in concealment trade-offs. The exploding rat also highlighted logistic fragility. A small device still required complex movement. Because of that, SOE increased compartmentation efforts. They refined packaging and dispatch protocols elsewhere. They also emphasized device plausibility over shock value. Other devices shifted towards standardized forms. Standard forms were easier to brief and deploy. The rat remained a one-off artifact. Its technical innovation was limited but specific. It combined explosive physics with human routine prediction. The core physical mechanism was simple detonation. The strategic mechanism was induced careless disposal. Such induced disposal was the main engineering decision. In later internal assessments, the device was labelled impractical. Impracticality did not mean it was harmless. A boiler detonation could maim workers. It could also stall production for weeks. The planners accepted that potential in wartime context. They framed it as sabotage against hostile industry. Contemporary files focused on utility calculations. The rat itself functioned as a delivery container. The explosive charge was the primary destructive element. Detonator selection remained the key failure variable. Premature initiation risk was ever present. Non-initiation risk was also present. Both risks were unacceptable for some officers. Those officers recommended alternative sabotage tools. Alternatives included magnetic charges and incendiary packs. Magnetic charges required metal access points. Incendiary packs required longer presence near targets. The rat offered a transient placement option. That option was removed by enemy warning. Once warned, boiler workers changed disposal behaviour. They began using sticks or tools for carcasses. Their tool use reduced the chance of coal insertion. They also began reporting unusual carcasses. Reporting increased local security investigations after suspicious finds. Investigations increased risk for any nearby agents, therefore continued rat use became counterproductive. SOE shifted to other deception-based packages. Some packages imitated spare parts or food. Those packages were less inherently revolting. They also drew less immediate attention. This ambiguity undermined the rat's reliability. Reliability was essential for scarce networks. By late 1942, the device became a cautionary case. It was referenced in training as an example. It demonstrated creativity under material constraints. It also demonstrated the limits of shot concealment. The few constructed units became historical curiosities. They appeared in post-war collections and narratives. Their survival depended on capture and storage. No confirmed boiler detonations are widely documented. Therefore, operational impact remained mostly hypothetical. Yet the concept shaped enemy perception of sabotage. Perception influenced security measures and labor routines. Security measures consumed German time and resources. That consumption was itself a modest sabotage gain. Such connections are plausible but hard to prove. SOE documents usually avoided definitive causality claims. They preferred cautious language about potential effects. The exploding rat fit that cautious framing. It was designed to create possible cascading disruption. A simple hidden explosive load powered it. Enemy routine served as the delivery system. It failed mainly through interception and exposure. And its replacement came through more standard sabotage packages. Those replacements prioritized concealment within non-biological materials. They also prioritized components with longer shelf life. The rat's shelf life remained a critical weakness. Organic tissue decomposes and changes quickly. That change complicates storage and transit. It also increases the chance of accidental discovery. From a technical standpoint, the design was marginal. Psychological assessment described the design as vivid. SOE balanced both considerations in its evaluation. The final bureaucratic conclusion favored reliability over novelty. The exploding rat remained an abandoned tool concept. Post-war accounts treated as wartime improvisation. The device reflected assumptions about boiler labor. Its intended endpoint was a German boiler firebox. SOE files record it as cancelled sabotage inventory.